Hi, I'm Tom Zimmerman from the EMDR podcast. This episode is about keeping your eye out for agendas. EMDR doesn't tend to play very well with agendas on either the client end or the therapist end. Too much agenda on the therapist end can be a little bit of a block or an obstacle or hurdles for clients. So, um, let's think about, and part of what we need to do as EMDR therapists is think about what EMDR is and really make sure we're providing education to our clients about this dance and about their role and how to do their part of this dance. Because if absent clear guidance, um, all of us tend to do what we're used to doing. And we do want to be pretty clear that what we're used to doing, we may be comfortable with, but it may not be very effective. And one of the reasons that our clients are seeing us is that what they're used to doing hasn't been terribly effective. So one way to think about EMDR is we activate a memory, we notice what comes while our brain gets a left-right simulation. So let's think about that for a minute. So the center of that is noticing. And we want to educate clients on what the heck noticing means and what it means to notice something that's coming to you and is coming as a product of that activation. So one of the things that simply will happen is the client will start with a memory, but yet very quickly, what they're noticing may not be the distress from that memory, but may be something adjacent to that. So maybe, can you imagine someone who's starting with a memory around, for instance, divorce, but the distress that's coming may not be from that memory, may be from all of these connections that are coming up, and the client may be really stuck in an agenda. And sometimes what an agenda looks like in that case may be, why do all my relationships not work out? Am I ever going to find love? So anything that a client is noticing that may have a question mark after it, we do want to kind of put our ear out and evaluate that a little bit and become a little bit tuned to it and wonder if it may be an agenda. So if the center of the EMDR road is noticing and noticing what comes to you, we want to make sure that what the client is noticing is what's coming and not a thought process that may be serving as a bypass around the difficulty of noticing. So sometimes this comes up with clients who are religious. And thank goodness. I mean, I like working with clients who are religious because they do have a footing in this world and they have built-in resources and they have ways of explaining some things to themselves that may help make sense of a really difficult world that has a lot of adversity wrapped around existential realities, just really, really difficult things. So, but one of the things that many people who may have a spirituality or who may have a religious tradition, when they feel a certain way, they may be very likely to just snap to a resource. So, giving something to Jesus, right? Dismissing something as not theirs because, everything happens for a reason. So beware of, or snapping to forgiveness. When a client says as a part of their noticing, I just have to hurry up and figure out how to forgive them. Keep your eye out, keep your ear out for that. Anytime you hear a client say, I just have to anything, I hear agenda. And again, the noticing part is about noticing what's coming. It's not about trying to figure anything out. People in recovery, substance use recovery is full of aphorisms. It's full of shortcuts. It's full of affirmations. It's full of things designed to keep you from sitting in and noticing difficulty. So a lot of times when clients feel a certain way, they will snap to a way of thinking that may, if we're not careful, serve as a bypass to the difficulty of noticing. And the amazing thing about EMDR is that when healing comes, it comes to you, and it typically comes pretty fully formed, and it almost always comes as a function of noticing. And hint, hint, when we first dive down, EMDR is a dive down. When we activate that memory, typically it is a dive down into distress. So again, this makes sense. We're activating content in the limbic brain, these highways that connect the limbic brain to the brain stem. A lot of noticing that happens in the first half of a really good, really effective EMDR session is likely to be somatic. There may be things that come on other channels, but if you're not, if you're noticing and you are completely eclipsing the body, I'm just making a little note of that. And we're wondering if maybe there are other channels that may be a little bit more effective to work on. So again, when healing comes, it comes to you. And I think about a little bitty green sign on the interstate that's 2 miles away. And we're noticing and noticing and noticing. And what you need to heal, the information that you need to heal, comes to you as a function of that noticing. We're working our way to that sign, and that sign may be 24 feet across, this huge big green sign, exactly what you need, exactly what is needed to unlock this memory. The metaphor that I'm using here, the implications of that are that you did not make that sign. You did not build that sign. You noticed your way to it. And healing and the things that come on this journey, they're going to come to you. So it's important that we be tuned into noticing it. Also, what an agenda is a lot like looking through a straw. So it restricts the range of what we may notice. Often when clients say something like, well, you ask, what are you noticing? And they may say, well, I told myself I wasn't going to cry today. So we may need to intervene. And I may say, I have no idea about whether you may need to cry. However, what I'm going to ask is that if you have a pressure behind your eyes, notice it, right? If you have a sensation that's coming, that's the most prominent thing, noticing it, notice it. Not feeling something, coming into this process with the agenda of not letting yourself feel certain things or go certain things, go to certain places, is an agenda. So we want to simply notice what comes. And if we're doing that, if we're activating a difficult memory, noticing what's coming while our brain is getting a left-right stimulation, that is likely to move us in an adaptive direction. It is really good news to let clients know as they're preparing to work on a really difficult target, maybe even an intractably difficult memory, which has felt like an intractably difficult memory for them, to let them know there is nothing you need to figure out today. EMDR is not about you purposefully, intentionally putting the right Jenga pieces in the right order. Things will organize themselves when you simply activate, notice the distress, and notice what is coming to you. EMDR is not a power think session. There's nothing about this left-right stimulation that's going to automatically let you just think your way through this memory, lining up the difficulties, properly assigning, guilt, shame, blame in exactly the right proportions. And while that may be where you end up, again, that is not work that we do cognitively, purposefully, and on purpose. And if we bring that into this work, we are looking through a straw rather than simply letting ourselves notice what is coming. And if there's anything we know about our own intentions and our own agendas, is that our intuition about what we need to heal is often dramatically wrong and misguided and incorrect. So think about sessions where the client will tell you, wow, I had absolutely no idea that needed to connect in that way, or that I needed to feel those things. That is simply noticing what is coming. And agendas, if we're not careful, we may find ourselves circling an Arby's on the side of the highway, rather than simply noticing what's coming and moving down the interstate in the direction of our goals. So again, all of the channels that we bring are valid, are important, and are needed in this journey. But when we go into it with too much of an agenda, with too much thought, right? Too much too much of a hand that may restrict or may constrain what is coming. Just beware. So educating the client on this dance is a core task of a really good EMDR therapist, letting them know that what is remarkable and beautiful about EMDR therapy is precisely the way it may be different than the ways that we're used to working. And there is a lot of surrendering of will. There's a lot of surrendering of control. And what is beautiful about this work is letting the brain, letting the nervous system do the work that on this pathway that it somehow already knows to do. And a lot of what EMDR is simply removing many of the obstacles that may have kept us from healing all of this time. Creating a context in which we carefully remove the obstacles that many of those obstacles are cultural, that may have kept us from making adaptive sense of these experiences all along. So let's be careful of what we bring in. Activate a memory, notice what comes while your brain gets a left-right stimulation. If you're doing a whole lot more than simply noticing what is coming, you may be messing up the recipe, by which I mean you may be stirring some sand into your brownie mix. So sometimes when EMDR doesn't go well, sometimes when EMDR, the client kind of jumps and doesn't quite make it to the landing point, consider agendas. Consider if the client didn't bring too much intention, right? Too much agenda, too much, in some ways, too much thought, and maybe trying to take a shortcut or a bypass around the difficulty of simply noticing, and the uncertainty of simply noticing what comes and what is coming as a function of your healing. So keep that in mind. It's pretty easy to nudge people back onto the interstate when you notice that they're circling a Taco Bell, right? So nudge them back onto the interstate. There's nothing to figure out. When in doubt, scan your body, find the place of most distress, and just notice it there. When it moves and shifts and changes, follow it with your awareness. If you're doing a whole lot more, particularly with really complex trauma, you may be pouring a little bit of sand into something that does not need it. So thank you, and be in touch.